On today's episode of Driving the Alphabet, where I have AI give me a noun that starts with the next letter of the alphabet and I filibuster on it while I drive, today I was given mountain, which I absolutely love because I love mountains. So, I grew up part of my life in Arizona, but mostly I grew up in Utah County, which Utah County starts about a half an hour south of Salt Lake. If you're not familiar with Utah, that maybe is helpful, maybe is not. But we are surrounded by mountains. We're in a valley there, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I think it's beautiful during the winter when it snows, but Utah has gotten very little snow this winter, which is quite concerning. Anyways, mountains are formed in a lot of different ways. You can have Earth's plates push against each other. You can have, technically I don't remember, I used to know a whole bunch of different ways that a lot of things could come to be. But I know that valleys in between mountains come from different ways. If your valley between mountains, which you don't always have valleys between mountains, you can just have one mountain sticking out. But if you have a valley between mountains, if it's jagged, if it's a V, it's usually created by a river. You can also have just like a bunch of plates pushing against each other. I would assume that could create a V as well. But if you have a big U instead of a V that your valley is, then it's generally from glaciers. So if you look up Glacier National Park, which is in Montana, it's on the border. I don't remember what the park is called once you're over into Canada, but if you look up Glacier National Park, you'll see that it's definitely more of a U shape that is separating the mountains rather than a V shape, and that's because it's glaciers. It's carved by glaciers rather than being carved by rivers. So, and reason that there's lots of reasons I love mountains, but I grew up, what type of bird is that? I grew up hiking a lot, and we hiked in the Grand Canyon a lot, which isn't a mountain, but in Arizona there's a mountain called, I don't remember what it's called. All I know is the Kennedy, the health dude. Anyways, Camelback Mountain, that's what it's called. Camelback Mountain was there, and we hiked that occasionally, and we would run into wildlife, and it was just good memories. And then I moved to Utah, and with all the mountains, I would hike frequently in the mountains. And when we would go on family vacations, it would be to places like the Tetons or Yellowstone or Glacier or other, I can't remember all of the names of the mountain ranges we'd go to, but the Uintas. So I grew up hiking a lot. If you want to look up a beautiful backpacking trip that is mostly flat, the very end isn't, but it's mostly flat, look up Red Castle Lake in the Uintas. Absolutely beautiful. Just know if you are going to the Uinta Mountains, even if there's no rain on the forecast, it will probably rain. It's not like it's a super wet area. It's how it always works out. Everyone I know says, yep, you better prepare to get rained on in the Uintas because it just does what it wants there. So, but yes, Red Castle Lake is a beautiful hike in the Uinta Mountains. And more than hiking, I also grew up mountain biking in the mountains near my house. I didn't really get into that until high school, but I absolutely loved that. And, the elevation change, without elevation change, mountain biking is a lot less fun. You can still have fun on fairly flat trails, but the elevation change makes it so that, you have your speedy downhills, which are fun. Also, probably my favorite, when I was in junior high, I'd done some before, and I always loved it, but I really got into rock climbing, probably around 7th or 8th grade. Absolutely loved it, and Utah and Salt Lake counties both have amazing canyons you can go up to do rock climbing. So I would go up American Fork Canyon a lot to go rock climbing as a teenager, and it was amazing. And further north, Little and Big Cottonwood Canyon have rock climbing or bouldering, depending on which one. They both have some of both, but each one is known more for one than the other. And I always forget which one's which, but I could drive you to the one with the bouldering pretty easily. And I went to college also in Utah County, but further south than American Fork Canyon. And there's a canyon called Rock Canyon, and I would rock climb there. And so I just have a love for mountains, because when you're there, you just, appreciate God's creation, and the stress that comes from everyday life is less prevalent, and you can enjoy it, and you have to focus. So part of the reason that I feel like the stress of everyday life goes away more is you do have to focus. If you're not paying attention in the mountains, that's not a great thing, especially if you're rock climbing or mountain biking. You've got to pay attention, and when your mind is so focused on the one thing that you're doing, it's freeing from everything else. At least that's how I feel about it. So for those reasons, I love mountains. Also, they're just beautiful. I have never looked at a mountain and gone, that is an ugly mountain. I'm sure there's some that I think are prettier than others, but I've never seen a mountain that I thought was ugly. So maybe I'm a weirdo to not think any mountains are ugly, and maybe someone could show me a mountain I've never seen before and I would think it was ugly. But I just think they're beautiful. So I think I would have a hard time moving to somewhere with no mountains, because I love them so much. But I would survive, but that would not be my first choice. Although if I moved away from mountains but moved close to an ocean and surfing was available, then I would probably be okay, because I think surfing is fun. I've only done it twice, but it was a blast, and I was terrible at it. But that is what I think about mountains, and I love the wildlife in mountains. I love when I see a moose while on a hike, although that's always a tad frightening because they're big animals, but they're majestic. And same with bears, and deer are creepy, but that's another story for another day. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a story for today. So there's this mountain called Mount Timpanogos that hovers over Utah County, and beautiful mountain. But I hiked it when I was 12, and we were with some neighbor kids and with my dad, and the neighbor kid's dad was, the neighbor kids plural dad, because they were brothers. He wasn't getting there till later that night, because we were backpacking it, and we were eating dinner in this little valley. Not valley, that's not the word I'm looking for. In this field. We were eating dinner in this field, and this one deer comes around and starts circling us, and he got closer and closer with every circle. Creepy as anything. And so I was very concerned, and my dad scared that deer away, and I was like, good, it's gone. He came back with a second deer. Circled, got closer and closer, spiraling inwards. What is wrong with these deer? My dad scares them away. Comes back with a third. It continues until, if I remember, I don't remember if it was 7 or 9 deer. But they kept going until there were a whole bunch of deer circling and getting closer. And I, at that point, was like, we're going to be murdered by these deer tonight. Pretty sure of it. We weren't murdered by the deer that night. My dad made us all good in the tent, and he's like, I will take care of it. Don't know what he did. He took care of it. The deer didn't destroy us. But after that, I was always a little worried when I would see deer on hikes, especially in Utah, because I'm pretty sure they're out to get you. So, yeah, I don't trust the deer. Anyways, that's all my filibustering on mountains. I'm sure I could filibuster more, but might as well be done. Enjoy life. See you guys.